morning. It's Tuesday, July 5th, and there's a lot of shit going on in this country because this country is split asunder, as they say. But what I'm going to talk about today is the picketing that's going on around the houses of the Supreme Court. About the demonstrators who show up there with drums and other instruments that make tons and tons of noise. And the justices are upset, and requests have gone out from the Supreme Court Marshal to the police departments in Maryland and Virginia to please get the demonstrators off the front lawns of the houses of the Supreme Court justices. And I don't know, I've never seen a Supreme Court justice have a demonstration against their rulings before. So this uproar by the people who are allowed to take advantage of the free speech in this country. And these have been basically peaceful protests. There's been no damage to the houses of the justices. There's just been a lot of noise and demonstrations in front of their houses. And probably the neighbors are upset by the disturbances in their neighborhoods. But we have to understand that this country is in dire straits right now. And we have to understand that a great majority of the people in this country are against the last two decisions that came down from the Supreme Court, among other decisions that came down from the Supreme Court. But the overturning of Roe versus Wade has put this country in a different cycle, a different demonstration cycle. And so why should these justices be surprised that they're being demonstrated against? Because for 50 years this was the rule, the law of the land. And now, because we have this conservative Supreme Court appointed by a disgraced president, ruling that Roe versus Wade was incorrect. And why? Because a different mindset has come up in the court. And this new court, has interpreted it differently than the other courts over the last 50 years have interpreted. So the Constitution is a living, breathing instrument. And it's time that America realized that every time we get a different set of individuals on the Supreme Court, stuff like this is liable to happen again and again. And we just see that the Supreme Court is not anything right now except a political instrument. Because there was no reason to overturn Roe versus Wade. There was no reason to reinterpret that law. The only reason was their personal and political ambitions of the court. They chose to be conservative, ultra-conservative. And they ignored the rights of women and the rights of choice. Do we not have free choice in this country? And who is to say when the life of a fetus really begins? I mean, I have a good friend who's a doctor and a Catholic, and so he believes that at insemination you have a life. But most scientists don't agree with that. And this Supreme Court has chosen to take that approach. And is this going to be a new thing? Is this going to happen every year with this court? And maybe if this court changes its makeup in a few years, because there's a couple of guys on this court who are conservative and quite old. So is it going to change again? And is this going to set a precedent for the future? Are we going to have demonstrations, ongoing demonstrations for Supreme Court justices because of their actions? That's quite possibly the way it's going to be. And will that affect the minds of the people who might become Supreme Court justices in the future? Maybe. Is it right? Is it right for the general population to really decide the way they want to live? That's a tenuous situation, especially when we have something like guns, where we have 65 or 70% of the people who want gun control. But then we got a very adamant group of people who still want to carry their guns. So there are a lot of things that are going on in this country that the Supreme Court could rule on and could cause major disturbances. But it's never happened before like this. Have we reached a new level of action that's going to be taken by the public in the future? Is this a bad example that we are setting? That the Supreme Court, which is like a holy grail, is under attack. And rightly so, I think, rightly so. It should be shown that there are people who are distressed by the makeup of this court and distressed with the opinions, because these opinions are way too far to the right, according to most. And part of that is because the document that they're working from has always caused problems. It's not clearly defined and easily misinterpreted. And if you ask 10 people to read it, they could come up with 10 different explanations as to what it means. And so I think that this may be the wave of the future, that nothing is sacred, that the Supreme Court is not the sacred institution that it has always been looked upon. And maybe that's because this court has really been driven to the nth degree of politicism. Their politics have gotten in the way of clear thinking. And they misled the people who questioned them about their feelings on certain things, because they were questioned about Roe versus Wade during their confirmation hearings. And they all said, well, it's precedent, we'll probably go along with it. And deep down inside, I don't believe any of them were telling the truth at that point in time. So they shouldn't be upset by the demonstrations that are going on. They have to learn to live with it, as we in this country are learning to live with their decisions. So I'll leave you with those thoughts this morning, and have a great day. Bye.